the hyperscalers credit default swaps have been catching a lot of demand. So credit default swaps essentially are insurance on debt. All right. So this was a really big deal back in 2008, right? Is when everyone started to learn about what a credit default swap was. Because what was happening back in '08 was that essentially there was these derivative contracts that were being created to help people to bet against the housing market. Now, the way that this worked was you had a bunch of debt that was being issued in the form of these mortgages, okay, that people were using to buy homes that they weren't qualified for. People started to realize, wait a minute, these mortgages are not necessarily uh, investment grade, right? These are being sold to people as if they're investment grade, but they're really not. So how can I bet against this housing market? And if I'm not uh, confused, I think the credit default swap was uh, let me see. It was very much so popularized during this moment. It technically had existed before, but this is when the first time that credit default swaps were really being used at an institutional level. And so what happened was credit default swaps were people saying, "Hey, I would like to have a way to bet against these mortgages that are being packaged up and sold." And so there's two different instruments that were being okay. The one that was being created at the time was a collateralized debt obligation, I believe, was what was actually being created at the time. And what was happening was all of these mortgages that were being issued were being packaged into a bundle,
Hmm.
and then so the bank would issue a mortgage, okay, into a bunch of different people that they kind of knew that weren't going to pay this thing off. They would take these mortgages because loans in this sense are assets of the bank, and they would sell those mortgages to another bank or another investor. And so knowing, right, that these things were bad mortgages that weren't going to get paid off, they're like issuing as many as they can and selling them as fast as they possibly could. And eventually people were like, wait a minute, these banks are issuing debt that they know is bad and then selling it to someone else. Well, I would like to have a way to short these collateralized loans, these collateralized debt obligations that I know are worthless. And so this became the rise of the use of the credit default swap, which is literally just insurance against a debt. So if someone were to default on this debt, including these collateralized debt obligations that are just these big pools of these loans, then I'm actually going to get a payout for the fact that they've defaulted on this debt. And so these credit default swaps were being used not only as insurance, because first off, if I'm the owner of the debt, then I can buy a credit default swap as an actual hedge, right? That's a proper way that you could use it. But what was happening is people were coming in and speculating
Hmm.
on this, and they were like, "Oh no, I'm just going to buy these derivative contracts that say that I think that debt is worthless and it's going to go default." So, anyways, basically what I'm saying is that's what was happening then. You had a huge rise in the demand for credit default swaps, basically betting on people defaulting on their loans. And we're starting to see a massive rise in the demand for credit default swaps in the world of these AI hyperscalers. And so this is something that's definitely worth noting. That there's a growing market for tech CDS. In particular, also we're seeing like the DTCC was the one to kind of actually come out and say this, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, which is the largest clearing corporation in the United States. They help to basically settle transactions across all of the derivatives and not even derivatives, but securities market. And they're the ones that are kind of letting people know that this is what's going on. And we're talking about to the point to where there's new dealers that are popping up, like new banks, imagine, that are selling these credit default swaps on these tech companies are popping up because there's a demand that there is for them. So,
Who
anyways, go
who
ahead.
has access to that? Like who?
Hedge funds,
Hedge
banks.
funds.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Hey, you made it to the end of the clip. That means you're probably enjoying this. And if so, just know that you can catch us live every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to see the full version of this episode, you can click the link in the description down below. Otherwise, YouTube thinks that you will enjoy this next.